bringing you hot, smoldering topics on basis. Your participation is important.
Good morning and welcome to yet another edition of The Burning Issue, and this is the Thursday edition. We are grateful that you found time to join us. We sincerely apologize for starting the program slightly late. Of course, this was due to circumstances beyond our guests' control, but we are grateful that you exercised some patience, and here we are. We are ready to get down to the burning issues. And of course, let me at this point make appreciation and inform you, our listeners, that we are not only on 5FM 89.9 here in Lusaka, we are also live on our partner radio stations. We are live on Tuta FM in Mansa, covering the rest of Luapula province on 90.7 FM, live on Muchinga Radio in Chinsali, covering Muchinga province on 88.1, and live in Kapiri Mposhi and surrounding areas, FM 100.3 FM. And remember, we are also live in Central Province, Kawe to be Spice FM on 91.1, covering the rest of Central Province. And to the Copper Belt, we are live on 99.7, and also in Chingola, covering the rest of the Copper Belt, is iWave FM radio that is on 90.1. And so later on in the course of the program, I'll give you, our listeners, an opportunity to call in and interact with our guest. And let me also make mention that we are live also on our Facebook page. That is 5FM Radio Zambia. That is 5FM Radio Zambia. So let's get going. Let me at this point introduce my guest. My guest this morning, he is a lawyer by profession, Honourable George Chisanga. He is also a member of Parliament for Lukashia Constituency, and he is the Patriotic Front Chairman for Legal. And always a pleasure to have you. We are grateful that you made it, and we haven't spoken in quite in a while, but we are grateful to have you here.
Zach, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be given to me as well, to come and speak to the people on radio station. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
We really appreciate that you made it, despite the fact that you are feeling a little bit under the weather.
Yes.
And we had to get you out of the sick bed. We are grateful that you still accepted to make it despite how you are feeling.
Absolutely. I also thought that duty calls.
Sometimes
you need to get...
these are national matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do one or two things.
Yeah. And the burning issue at the moment, which we will discuss, and we feel you are very able to help us understand most of these things, is, of course, the amendment of the Constitution. And the proposed amendment were tabled yesterday in Parliament. You, as Patriotic Front and others, walked out of that. You will give us the reasons why in the first place you walked out. But before we get to that, I love the people of Lukashia. I would love to know how they are doing. Quickly, maybe we can briefly just bring us up to speed how development is moving in Lukashia constituency.
Well, thank you very much, Zach. In fact, you would want to know that I was in Lukashia from the day of the Youth Day celebrations.
Oh, okay.
And I spent 11 days in the constituency going around looking at the projects that we are doing under the auspices of the CDF, as well as the other projects I've been doing rather with other cooperating partners that I've got at my office as Member of Parliament for Lukashia constituency. I must say that apart from the political anxieties that people have, regarding the future of the Patriotic Front, I think our economic front we're doing very, very well. I was actually very elated myself to establish that Transparency International has undertaken a baseline study of the CDF activities countrywide, and lo and behold, Lukashia constituency, features as the third, best performing constituency in the implementation of the CDF, and that is mainly in the areas of how we've utilized the resources, what projects we have identified, and how far we've worked in implementing those projects. I didn't get this credit from myself alone. I shared this credit with all the members of the CDF committee at Lukashia constituency, headed, of course, by a retired general called General Banda, very, very brilliant chairman of the committee, and also all the other members of this CDF committee. I think we are worth that credit because we were very serious in terms of how we approached the implementation of CDF project. Like I said when I was on this radio before, I considered CDF not a political tool, but an activity of trying to improve the economy of Lukashia.
Right.
So I'm sure that when when I was given the opportunity to appoint people onto the committee, I looked for people that had competencies.
Right.
Some of them are more competent than even myself, because I felt that, look, you don't want to be the one who should lead a committee if you are not as competent as others. So for me, the credit was basically to identify correct people, put them in the committee, and ensure that they work. The challenges that were identified by TIZ in the implementation is basically the relationship between the committee and the technocrats. And when I did my own investigation, I discovered that the technocrats, I think what is hampering their productivity is basically political interference, because cadres from the UPND and the senior members of the government would like to direct CDF in a particular direction that speaks to their immediate whims at caprices. So we've gone into engagements with those that I think are trying to interfere with the activities of CDF in Lukashia. I've also tried to ensure that we engage the technocrats and remind them that they're the ones who carry the heaviest weight when it comes to implementing this project. I'm hopeful that going forward, they will resist any temptations they've had, because we've had scenarios, of unfinished projects. We've had scenarios of misapplied resources. We've had scenarios where basically cadres come and line up the people and say, give these ones empowerment monies, which are not paid back. So all those issues have been identified and we've engaged, and I'm hopeful that we can get to solving those problems even as we continue to implement the CDF project. Yes, we have had our own challenges, but I think when you are rated as one of the 3 top in the country, it gives you the feeling that at least you're doing much, much better than others. Of course, we can do better than that.
Absolutely. Well, let's get right into it. The burning issue, the elephant in the room, is the amendment of the Constitution. My first question will definitely go on the first issue that was raised and presented in yesterday's ministerial statement, the constituency delimitation and CDF distribution. How do you respond to the argument Article 58 and 68 will promote constituency development funds?
I would rather we approach the question of the need. Okay, we need to identify as a nation.
Right.
At the time where we are as a nation, with what has happened under the watch of the UPND in the last 4 years, do we have a need? Is there a necessary, demand or imperative for us to amend the Constitution? And also, do we have time between now and the next election? The noise about the enactment of the Constitution, if you remember, started towards the end of 2023 by the UPND, when they started raising issues of, we need to clean up the Constitution. They started raising issues of we need to harvest low-hanging fruits in the Constitution making and also deal with non-controversial provisions of the Constitution.
That's right.
And that is how they tried to justify their quest to lead the amendment of the Constitution. As early as that time, when they approached stakeholders, including the Patriotic Front, the response they got from stakeholders were that we think that the window for enactment of for proposing amendments to the Constitution had already passed, because the time we had between the time in October 2023 and the next election is too short for us to undertake a meaningful amendment of the Constitution. They've still gone ahead with this justification that no, we are just going to make minor amendments to the Constitution, and that for us we are still targeting low-hanging fruits and clauses in the Constitution that are not controversial. We as Patriotic Fund had a position paper written to them through the Secretary General, Ndarfa Nakachinda. We raised 2 issues. Firstly, the issue of the time itself, and also the issue of the procedure they wanted to implement. We needed to be clear on how they're going to go about a roadmap of enacting this Constitution, how they're going to identify the content of the Constitution making process, as well as what they're going to put in place in terms of the protection of the content of the Constitution. Because we know, we are politicians. We know that a politician would like to have the last say in any enactment of any legislation. But our demand was that a constitution is not a product of politicians. A politician only provides what is called political will to the making of the constitution. A constitution making program is a program that should involve a wider stakeholder consultation. And we met those conditions, and we told them, if you meet these conditions, then it will mean that even Bill 10 that you yourselves, participated in when we started making it, but when it came to the 11th hour, we decided to scuttle that process because of political interests. Then Bill 10 itself will compete with what you're going to put in place in terms of making the new constitution. They never came back to us. They never got back to any other stakeholders. If you have seen in the last couple of months, the religious organizations, CSOs, and the eminent Zambians have come to the public and have voiced the need for us to avoid this process because we just don't have time. And the thinking, of course, has been that there may just be a quest to manipulate the constitutional process that we've got in the country to tilt it in favor of the party which is in power. And they said, if you are genuine leaders, can we share of this idea? Can we go back to the next election using the current constitutional setting? And possibly you're going to deal with any other things after the election of 2026. The UPND government did not respond. What we then came and heard was now a rushed process of trying to get Parliament to commit to making this constitution. The first thing you heard was when the president was in Kasama, unprovoked, he made a statement that insofar as he was concerned, because he was addressing the youths at that time in Kasama, he says to the listening of the women, rather, he said to the listening of the women in the crowd that insofar as he was concerned, the women had agreed that we were going to amend the constitution. The women received that statement with shock and surprise because none of the women had actually said we wanted to amend the constitution. The women belonged to the groups that had said to the government, we don't have time to amend the constitution. So for the president to make, a forced statement, in the public that we have agreed to amend the constitution, the women resisted that statement. The president did not renege. When he went to Mongo, he made a similar statement and said the youths, have agreed that we're going to amend the constitution. The youth also got completely astounded that where is this coming from? Because we've never had any engagements with government where we have voiced our agreement to amend this constitution. Okay, he didn't stop there. When you saw him going to open some facility, in Kabwe, first they just changed the whole scenario of how the president, engages with the public. The first thing they did is they took us back to the UNIP days. If you saw what was happening before the president went to Kabwe, there were announcements, that starting with the schools were going to open, I think, quarter day, and the grade 11s and 12s were going to be asked to go and participate or to attend the rally, or they will come, the president was going to come to some ground in Kabwe. Secondly, the universities and colleges around Kabwe were also told the same story, that the president is coming and therefore you should all not come to school. There won't be any school on that day, and please go. People still resisted that. People started voicing concerns. Why are you doing this? Okay, unfortunately, if you heard what I think the PS or the DC in Kabwe, he made a statement, no, actually this is correct. We would like the kids to go and interact with the president. When the president came, he didn't do what he came to do. He came to open, some facility to do with seed production. He didn't do that. Instead, he started begging the public that came to see him, to vote for him in 2026. He started conscripting, the students from universities and colleges around Kabwe, making them his campaign managers, because according to him, he gave them back their meal allowances. They should go now and campaign for HH to return. He started pleading with children who are in grade 11 and 12 to love him. Saying, do you love Buddy? Buddy loves you. I want you to go and tell your parents that Buddy loves you. And in that statement, again, he made a statement that the youths had agreed to amend this constitution. Unfortunately, most statements you have heard from stakeholders have said one voice and one voice alone. We don't have time to amend the constitution. For us as Patriotic Front, we had expressed the fears that there is something untoward that the UPND would like to do if they are given the opportunity to amend the constitution. And some naysayers were saying, oh no, for you it's just bad blood, for you are just crybabies, you see, because your Bill 10 collapsed. And Bill 10 was collapsed by the UPND itself. Even when they participated in sponsoring it, when it came to debating on the floor of the House, they decided to stay away from Bill 10. Now, our fears were confirmed yesterday when the minister came and made that ministerial statement in Parliament. We were now, convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that the UPND has no good intentions for the Republic of Zambia. The UPND is nothing more than a self-serving body of people that would like to impose themselves on the population, even when the population has told them this is not the direction to go. If you saw that unfortunate statement by the Minister of Justice, it was very worrisome. So worrisome that even the MPs on the right side of the speaker, the UPND MPs in the back benchers, who may not have known what was really contained in this proposal to amend the constitution, were as shocked as we were. Okay, about what the content is going to be, what is being suggested to be amended, what procedure is going to be invoked to amend the constitution, and how the Ministry of Justice has taken away the powers from the speakers to regulate the debate that is going to ensue in having to agree how we're going to go about amending this constitution. All that has been taken away from the speakers. The speakers are going to just participate in the process like any other person is going to be. If you heard the Minister of Justice, she even gave a roadmap of how many days Parliament is going to debate this amendment to the Constitution. It has never happened in the 60 years of Zambia's independence.
So who's supposed to give roadmap?
It's supposed to be the Speaker. We are Parliament. Parliament regulates its own business.
Right.
And Parliament regulates its business through the Speaker, the leaders of the House, the Minister or the Vice President on behalf of the government, leader of opposition on behalf of the opposition. Like we said before, they have managed to interfere with the opposition to the extent that now we don't even know who's the genuine leader of the opposition. So even that process itself has now been usurped because the Minister of Justice in the ministerial statement even laid down the amount of time that we're going to take in amending this constitution. And if you saw what happened, there was a misapplication of procedure. You asked me a question of how we walked out of the House and explaining it. What we saw was a very strange process being introduced by the Speaker on how we were going to respond to the ministerial statement. You have seen ministerial statements come to the House. You've seen how members of Parliament interact with the minister after a ministerial statement. But if you were following what was happening yesterday,
yes, I did.
Once the minister had finished giving a ministerial statement, the Speaker carpeted the members of Parliament and said, I'm not going to expect anybody to give a background to the question that you want as a minister, but for you to have the minister understand where you're coming from, you are entitled under your right and privileges to debate in the House, to give a small, even a short background to the question. The Speaker tried to justify it on the basis that, no, we had so many questions that people are going to ask. It has to be because this is a constitution we're making. We are not just doing a small legislative process. We are just about to touch a piece of legislation that sits at the center of our national governance system. So you don't carpet MPs by suggesting to them that, no, just ask a flat question so that the minister can answer as many questions as possible. It wasn't going to work. But see, if you notice again, when the first member of the opposition stood up to ask a question, the heckling that came from the other side, because now we knew there was a chorus. Maybe in connivance, that the chorus is going to be such that whoever wants to ask a question is going to be heckled to an extent where the question itself is not going to be clearly understood. So Honourable Chisopa was the first person to stand up and ask the question. That question was frustrated, and everything that came around. The Speaker then made an announcement saying we are going to drop this question, the question answer session after the ministerial statement. We're going to the next topic on the order paper. So
yes, there was that threat.
Yes, she actually made a position. She announced that we are now moving. She even asked for next agenda on the order paper. So we felt, look, this thing has come out. Let's now go out and canvass on how we're going to respond to this issue, because we felt that the public needed to know almost immediately what was going on in their House of Legislation. When we walked out, the Speaker unfortunately went back to the same issue and started asking questions. People allowing people to ask questions on the minister. That was a misapplication of procedure. Our standing orders do not allow the Speaker to do what they did. But unfortunately, we are at a time when the UPND has come to the public. The UPND has come to Parliament with a deal. Insofar as they are concerned, this is a ready-made amendment process. They have come to the House and said, here is the constitutional amendment we're going to do. You take it or leave it. They have not come to the House or to the public to say, we are proposing that we do these amendments. Can we now be told? The second thing that you must also bear in mind is that there's confusion about where we are with this process of amending the Constitution, which is why your questions that you're asking are actually questions supposed to be asked in future, because we're supposed to be given a roadmap. It is only now that the content of the proposed amendments have been made public. They're supposed to be circulated to the public so people can give feedback before it comes on the floor of the House. But this is not actually what is happening on the ground. If you followed the president in his frustration, in responding to the many concerns that Zambians have raised with the process that they're putting in place, waived the constitution and said, you don't know what is contained in this document. So he is sitting with the constitution at Community House, okay, with a draft constitution. Who drafted that constitution, we don't know, because the president said it, he's got it. When Hamasaka was dating the press, he also made a statement that we actually have the draft constitution. So from the statement that the president made and the statement that Damasaka made, the public became aware that the UPND is actually sitting with the constitution. That is unprocedural, because you can't sit with the constitution without having created a roadmap of where it is. For Buten to reach where it was with the time it was collapsed, it was 3 years of engagements, of stakeholder consultation, of getting to speak to the churches and other interest groups that were concerned with what was going to be contained in Bill 10. It took a period of 3 years. This government, the first thing they have told us is that they've got a draft constitution. That is a clear misapplication of procedure. Then when they discover that people are concerned that they're actually sitting with the constitution, you see what happened? The Minister of Justice came and said, oh, there's no draft constitution. So Zambians are bewildered. Do we have a draft constitution as stated by the president? Don't we have a draft constitution as stated by the Minister of Justice? She repeated herself in the House yesterday saying there's no draft constitution. So we don't know what to take home. We either have the draft constitution or we don't have it. But I can tell you from facts, I can tell you from what people have established, this draft constitution is available. The UPND has already drawn up the amendments. If you heard, even the minister herself started disclosing the content of what is in the draft, even when she's saying there's no draft. She's talked about that delimitation. She's talked about the increase of nominated members of parliament. She's talked about this distribution of CDF. She's talked about the tenure of the mayor's office. She's talked about several other things, which are supposed to only come after people have been consulted. But that tells you clearly that the UPND, as we're speaking today, has a draft constitution in the locals. The only thing they want is to justify the end by creating a means that they control themselves. And that's why I express worry, even here, of how the minister has even usurped the powers of the speaker by prescribing what is going to happen in the House, how long it is going to take for us to consult people, how long it is going to take for us to debate. They even know when we're going to finish and when the constitution is going to be appended to by the president. They've given us a period of only 90 days to amend the constitution. The UPND has not delivered on any of their promises that they're given to the Zambian people in 90 days. But in 90 days, they're determined to have a constitutional order change in the country without consulting the people. This is a concern that Zambians must address themselves to. You now ask me the specific questions.
Now we can get into specifics. And I think that we have a couple of them. I don't know if time will allow,
Yes.
but let me start with the ones that seem to be very controversial now.
Yes.
Let's start with the first one, which I said to you, and I spoke about the constituency delimitation
Yes.
and CDF distribution, because this is the reason why. So how do you then respond to the argument that the proposed amendments to Article 58 and 68 will actually promote more equitable distribution, because that's the main reason
Yes.
of constituency development?
Well, currently, to start with, there is no equitable distribution of CDF. CDF is a chaotic process. We have tried to make it work. It has not worked because of political interference, because of non-release of resources in time as it was designed to be. What I don't understand is why they're trying to justify it for a more equitable distribution. The only thing is, when you are doing a process that cannot find justification in the hearing of the public, you want to give it sweeteners. By suggesting that when we create more constituencies, there's going to be more equitable distribution of resources. That is basically a sweetener to try and get you people to buy into the prospect of having this constitution amended. In fact, at a time when we don't have time to amend it, at a time when people who are stakeholders have said we should not do this because it can by no means be justified. So these are sweeteners that sit at a place where those who are supposed to benefit from may begin to start thinking, okay, maybe let's just do it for the sake of trying to get equitable distribution. But the reality is that this statement itself is a farce. It is not going to actually work. Okay, but more importantly, we actually just don't have time. But for them to argue that this is going to give us more equitable distribution, of it is basically a sweetening process of trying to get a buy-in from the people who have already rejected the process of amending the constitution.
But are we then able to get around the delimitation problem by altering the resources allocation model, probably, so that constituencies which are larger in size by population as well get a bit more in resources, as opposed to those relatively smaller constituencies in size. Portions can be used in resource allocation, maybe.
Yes.
Would you think that maybe that should have been an alternative option?
We've already been facing that. You know, we've raised issues as opposition.
Oh yeah.
That the difficulty that we've had with the CDF implementation is this idea of one glove fits all. It doesn't work, because constituencies are different in terms of sizes, constituencies are different in terms of need. But see, they're not even thinking about that when they're suggesting this equitable distribution. They're trying to sweeten the process so that you people can begin to think that, okay, if Lukashia is cut into 3 constituencies, then there's going to be 36 million here, the 6 million there, the 36 million there. It's a farce. The UPND, you must watch them by comparing what they say to what they do. The UPND says one thing and does a completely different thing. When they rolled out CDF, I came here and I said to you, watch them. They're saying they're going to be giving at that time 28 million kwacha every 3rd of January. That's what we asked questions to the speaker, to the minister, when he first rolled out the CDF in 2022, and we said to him, when are we going to receive this money? He assured the government, the public, it was between 3rd and 5th January. When we started getting these resources, they never came in a lump sum. They were being distributed, piecemeal. And 2023 was even becoming worse, because now they're even cutting part of the money that was given. They will say, okay, we're going to build a chief's palace. That money won't come to Lukashia. We're going to buy a motor vehicle for the constituency. That money won't come to Lukashia, because the money was shrinking. The resource base kept shrinking as we're going up. But even when resource base was shrinking, they were increasing the allocation. They came from 28 to 31, and the money still was not coming. As I'm speaking to you now, the 2025 allocation has not come in full. The most that has come are those for bursaries and school, and university and college, payments for the small courses that we're taking our children in. They just say one thing and they implement a completely different thing. So when they begin to talk about equitable distribution, please watch them. They don't mean it. It is just a poison pill they are giving you so you can buy into this concept of amending the constitution, which is not reflecting the will of the Zambian people. It's reflecting the will of the ruling oligarch, which is growing, which is growing by a design that they've put in place. You spoke about delimitation, we've just answered it. The next thing they're talking about is the increased number of nominations.
I'm coming to it now,
Right.
because then candidate resignation and election process.
Yes.
What are your concerns regarding the proposed amendment? And this one is for Article 52(6),
Yes.
which would allow elections to proceed if a candidate resigns, avoiding fresh nominations.
Yes. Here is what the Zambians had said, when they were submitting to the CRCs that took place in the country before, and to the technical committee. That provision resulted from the input from the Zambians. They're the ones who had advocated that when a candidate withdraws, there must be fresh nominations. But also, that speaks to democracy, because you cannot disentitle people from choosing a person they would like to come and choose by saying elections are going to go ahead if the nominations is withdrawn. In principle, if the UPND are really a party that is given to consultation, this is not an issue that you can put in a draft the way they're putting it without consulting the people. But giving it the period they've given it of about 30 days to consult, who is going to manage to go around the whole country to go and hear people if they've changed their position from what they said to the previous CRCs and to the technical committee when it comes to dealing with the resignation of or withdrawal of candidates? The provisions that are contained in the Constitution today resulted from consultation with the people. It cannot be demonstrated by the UPND now. It will not be demonstrated by the UPND in the next 30 days that they've gone back to Honourable. They've gone back to, I will pick my ward in Lukashia constituency, which is 210 kilometers from Kasama, called Chimalilo, that they've gone back there to find out from them if their ward, candidate who withdraws, we should go ahead with the elections anyway. If the people are going to agree to that within a period of
90 days.
not even 90 days, actually 30 days.
Yeah.
Because 90 days is a whole process.
Yes.
The time they are trying to do all this, even if they are good intended projects, I mean, programs, we just don't have the time to consult the people. This multi-party democracy that we started in 1991 and that we reinforced by the constitutional amendment in 2016 is designed to make sure that those who lead at the behest of people who put them in power. They must show that at any time when they're going to amend even the smallest of the provisions of the Constitution, they have consulted the people who own the Constitution. Every section of the Constitution that begins to create a chapter tells you that it is the people of Zambia who own the Constitution. What the UPND is doing is basically imposing a dictatorship on the people of Zambia. It is contrary to the spirit of the multi-party system that we put in place. It is contrary to what people's expectations were when we came up with Act number 2 of 2016.
So in this case where they're saying, because here there's a specific, the current article states, and it also includes when death occurs, when one is incapacitated, and then there is the resignation. So the fact that resignation is the only one that has been picked.
Exactly.
Does that mean the rest will remain the same in that article?
That's the thinking. That should be the thinking, that the rest will remain the same. And then it tells you, how can you then justify it? Why are you only pinpointing one thing? Why are you only pinpointing resignation? Why aren't you pinpointing things like
death, and incapacitation? Yeah.
Why aren't you bring everything into this? And like I said, this is what you need to show, to go to the people and say, we are thinking this is what we want to put in. Can you give us feedback? What is going to happen? But see, what UPND are actually trying to do, and Zambians must read the cleverness of the UPND. The UPND is the only party in power which has had elections go ahead even when there's resignation. And see, resignations that have taken place in this country, and this is a point that you must understand, they have all been justified. If you saw what happened in Mpika, currently, for instance, I'll tell you, in Kawambwa, there's Italawad, where a candidate for the Tonse Alliance, sitting competing under NCP, has been abducted, taken out of the ward by people who are known to be UPND and government functionaries. He was moved from Kawamba to Mansa, where he spent the last five or 6 days. He is not campaigning. How do you expect him to participate effectively in the election? Don't you think that the person who's given that kind of ill treatment by those who are in power has got the right to resign, just to recreate a process where there's objectivity in carrying out an election? In Mpika in 2023, there was an election where a PF candidate was not actually adopted, and the tribunal was not nominated rather, and the tribunal that sat discovered that he was disenfranchised because there was violence, there were threats, and he had been abducted. And the tribunal said, no, this person was wrongly prevented from filing his nomination. And they recommended there must be fresh nominations. The UPND government, working with the ECZ, did not have fresh nominations. Instead, they went ahead with an election, and there was an election that took place without Patriotic Front participating in that election. What happened? The people of that ward suffered because the person that would have wanted to elect was not because of the connivance between the Patriotic UPND and the ECZ. So what they are now trying to do, and this is what Zambians must pay attention to, they are now trying to legislate the unjustified means of removing candidates from participating in election because something happens to them. What is going to happen if I'm abducted in Lukashya constituency, in 2026, and I'm not allowed to participate, and because of just justification, my people say, no, you need to withdraw so we can have fresh elections. Then they'll be saying, because of this amendment, they are going to have elections anyway, even if I don't participate in them. So for me, even this is ill-intended, but most importantly, within the timeline that we have, you cannot propose an amendment such as this one without talking to the people who have even had experiences of their own candidate being withdrawn, being abducted by the party in power, or their own candidate being offered, some niceties by the party in power. Most of the by-elections that have taken place in this country since the PND got into power is when our sitting, councillors especially, have been given sweets to be withdrawn from they've had to resign because they've been given a job to go and become a sweeper in a hospital or a sweeper in a school, and the young man draws, we have another election. So this is something that we need to maintain in our statute so that people can be careful when they are going to entice people to either withdraw or actually buy them out so they can have an election that suits their whims and caprices. So like I said, this is not the people's thinking. This is the thinking of a political elite that has come into power, which would like to consolidate itself in power.
The third one is enhanced representation and guaranteed seats. I mean, this is now Article 47(2)
Yes.
and 68, guaranteeing seats for women, youth, and persons with disabilities will impact the representation of these groups in Parliament.
Yes.
Would this have an impact?
See, Zambians have already responded to that. The current constitutional setting has a provision of affirmative action in favor of women, has a provision of affirmative action in favor of youths, has a provision of affirmative action in favor of people living with disabilities. It is all there. The fact that it has not been implemented is not because the constitution does not provide for it. It provides for it. I don't know in what more terms they would like it to be provided. But like I said earlier, these are all sweeteners that are designed to make certain sections of society begin to believe wrongly that this government actually cares for them. If this government cared for them, they would have been in Parliament even now. They have been sitting with us in Parliament because affirmative action is provided for even in the current constitutional setting. This is only designed to overdo something with a view to justifying introducing into the constitution things that people have never vouched for when they're responding to technical committees, when they've been responding to CRCs that have gone out to collect views from them. There's never been a time beyond what is contained in the current constitution when people have said, no, for us to be given, participation in the political process, we have to have this special treatment. The special treatment is already provided for in the current constitution. To begin to suggest to them that what is in the constitution is not sufficient is actually, for me, misleading and misguiding the public. There is provision for affirmative action in the current constitution. What they are trying to suggest is basically throwing sweets or crumbs at you so that you can begin to think that we are being cared for beyond what is supposed to be expected. And it is also wrong to expect that me, Mr. Chisanga, who's sitting in Lukashia constituency today as a member of parliament, I am not paying attention to people with disabilities. I'm not paying attention to youths. I'm not paying attention to women. Whatever we are doing in the constituency, we are trying to ensure that that affirmative action is implemented. That's why if you come to my CDF committee, I've got enough people representing people with disabilities. I've got youths who are sitting with me on the CAM and on the CDF committee. I've got women representation because I follow what is contained in the constitution. But to try and create the impression that the current constitution doesn't address that issue is actually to mislead the public and is to bring in justification that isn't required at the material time.
Now, my guest this morning is Honourable George Chisanga, Member of Parliament for Lukashia constituency. He's also the Patriotic Front Chairman for the Legal Committee. Now, let's get to the fourth one, which obviously involves you as MP, the role of MPs in local councils. What are your thoughts on the proposed amendment? And this one is on is Article 153(2), which would basically it means that we would integrate MPs into local councils for development synergy.
Yes, it's that's
what's the status quo
for me.
What's the status quo?
The status quo is that we don't sit in council as members of parliament because of the amendments to the constitution that took place, and this was because people had said we need to begin to refocus. Look, this is why we misunderstand the roles of members of parliament in this country. The responsibility that I have as a member of parliament is to participate in the legislative process, okay, in parliament. That is the primary responsibility.
Right.
I must participate in the legislative process. I must participate in providing oversight on the executive, okay. I must participate in ratification of the appointments by the executive, like judges and other people. That is my primary responsibility as a legislator, and also participate in the passing of laws that affect the people in Lukashia constituency.
Right.
Okay. When it comes to civic responsibilities, I have got councillors within Lukashia constituency. Each ward is presented by a councillor who sit in council. That is sufficient for them to do it. My synergy with them comes in the CDF initiative. Okay, because I'm set up as the figurehead of the constituency in terms of implementing CDF projects, and that's why I sit on CDF, and also I'm given a mandate to appoint about 5. With the amendment now, I appoint about 5 people who are sitting on CDF, and the councillors also nominate theirs just like we had before. So, for me, I do not, quite frankly, find this to be a justification that can become imperative for us to amend the constitution between now and the next election, simply because somebody wants to determine to council. The activities I've got in the council are sufficient through CDF. I just explained to you how our CDF has performed. I don't need to sit in council for me to effect that kind of work. Also, I spend more time in Lusaka. You see, and this might give me an opportunity to answer those who say, oh, MPs don't visit their constituencies. For me, as a style, from the time I was elected, I have made sure that at the minimum, I'll go to constituency twice in a month. But if I have difficulties, I can go once in a month. At least I do once in a month from the time I was elected. And when I go, I make sure I spend not less than 7 days, because I have to visit at least 3 of the wards. So,
but you are required to do so every week, no?
Of course,
every weekend.
It's not possible. Look, all of us are at Banda Hill. Okay, even those who are from within Lusaka cannot manage. The workload at Banda Hill is such that you have to
but you get allowances for that every week.
No, because there are no allowances.
Because I am made to believe that every Friday, as members of parliament, you are supposed to get allowances, because every Friday you're expected to drive back to your constituency.
That's a misinformation. And if there were any allowances, if they would not enable me to travel to Lukashya every Friday. Because to go to Lukashia every Friday, I spend about 12,000 kwacha on fuel, and that expenses.
And that is allocated, isn't it?
It's not allocated. The allowances are called sitting allowances, and they're not paid weekly. It's a misinformation. Allowances
isn't it that you receive fuel based on mileage?
Mileage is based, your fuel which is given to you is when you are coming to Parliament and when you are going back after closure of Parliament. Like this Friday when closed Parliament, I'm going to be given fuel enough for me to drive me back to Lukashia constituency. The next time I'm going to have fuel allocation is when I'll be coming back to Parliament. In between, there's nothing. The only thing you get in between are what are called sitting allowances, both for house sitting and committee sitting, and then a basic salary. But even that is not sufficient to make the kind of trips you're suggesting somebody must make every week, especially if I have to drive 920 kilometers from here every week. Fuel is not cheap in this country. But the reality is that the design of a member of parliament, to answer the question, is that you must commit most of your time to the legislature, because that is actually a responsibility. That's why in the constituency we've got ward officials, like ward councillors and the mayor. But this fictitious suggestion that they want to return MPs to councils. For me, it doesn't give any credence to justify the amendment of the constitution, because you are just going to lumber the member of parliament with additional work. To go for CDF, for instance, I spend my own money. I'm not given allocation by parliament or CDF for fuel to go to constituency and come back. I use my own money. And I do it purely because I want to make sure that I participate in as many meetings for CDF as possible, but they don't refund my fuel. I do it because I am then able to superintend what is going on in CDF. I'm also able to go around the community to see what projects we're doing on CDF. But to give you, to give me that additional responsibility, if they're going to give me funding, it is just an unnecessary addition to the expenses that government has on the member of parliament. Because like I said, most of my work is supposed to be done here. Okay, so that justification for me does not hold water.
Election petition, clarity and timelines. Do you agree with the proposed amendment to Article 73(2), 1015 and 1032, which aim to determine election petitions within 90 days or 14 days?
There's a provision already in the Constitution that provides for when you can file the thing. You see, these are the reason from what had transpired in the last petition, where the court was telling the petitioners, then President Chisanga, who was in the opposition, that timelines were moving because they kept raising one issue after the other, and they were told, look, there's a set timeline. So there was a conflict of interpretation between whether they should determine the election petition within 14 days or within 90 days, and the court came back with a ruling. So probably they're just trying to justify that we need to have a specific, a specific timeline within which to dispose of the presidential petition. Now, that for me is such a minute element to the constitution that it can't justify what the noise we're having about it. When people say, look, this can wait, frankly speaking, it should be able to wait. The window that we have is so little for us to justify the amendment of the constitution on the basis of a clause like that. Today, you can go to the court and they can look at the current provision in the constitution and they tell you how many days you are going to have to determine your petition from the beginning to the end. But for me, they're only trying to respond again to the misfortune that they suffered when they were in court, because they didn't comply properly with the timelines. Now it's a question of, I wasn't in power then, now I'm in power, I can go and tell them what to do. Like I said, you need to be able to be consultative. Stakeholders must have been visited. We should have asked them. The UPND are not the only stakeholders on that clause. The whole nation are stakeholders. You need to give it time to go around and say, the problem with how we determine presidential petitions, can we have feedback from the people? And let people give feedback. The time we are setting for 4 weeks to do that kind of work, together with other clauses that are going to be considered for amendment, is so insufficient that we're not going to do justice to the Constitution to amend it in this fashion.
Let's move to the sixth one, the by-election reforms and cost savings. I mean, how do you respond to the argument? And the argument is that the proposed amendment to Article 57, ending party vacancy by elections, will save the country significant funds.
My argument with that is, again, this is an issue that has to be given to the people to go and consider, because people would like to choose a person that they elected to represent them. If peradventure such a person dies, the right thing to do under democracy is to allow them to have another election to elect another person that they would like. That provision intends that if you and me, Zach, competed, and
you win,
I win. Oh, let me give you the win. You win. And unfortunately, you decide to resign, which is your right, or you decide, or unfortunately, you die, or anything happens that incapacitates you from continuing to work. That clause says we should avoid the by-election. We should instead go and pick the person who
came out second in the vote.
Yes. Now, that doesn't represent the will of the people. The people had chosen you. Why don't we give them an opportunity to go and find somebody else? You see, I know,
but then you are giving the second majority. You would basically say they could have yes chosen me, but there was also others close to that thought the second person was better.
Absolutely, but that is, for me, that is not democratic. Remember, we're considering a democracy. Democracy means you choose who you want. So there should always be an opportunity to be given to the people to have another election. So a by-election, in my assessment, these are my views. My views are that we should always give the people an opportunity to come and elect the person they would like to elect. We had this difficulty with the vice presidency and presidency, which is why in this country we vote for the president and the vice president. We lot them and vote for them. So that if anything happens to the president, the vice president will take over and will finish. That's how we resolved it. But that resolution means that if you and me are partners, basically the
running mate.
So if they vote for you, it means they voted for me. So at that very time, and you can justify it if then the president dies, are just walking and say, let me go and finish the tenure.
Because I got the same votes as the late.
But when it comes to members of parliament, I think we are moving out from the tenets of democracy by creating the impression that we can then come and pick the second person. That person already came out second because that wasn't the most preferred person in the constituency. The ideal thing to do is to rerun that election, have another by-election that you vote for somebody. But these are my views. My position on that is that, again, the time that we are giving the nation to go and decide such a very controversial issue, and you see the UPND is trying to justify this, saying these are non-controversial provisions. That provision, sir, is extremely controversial, because if they chose Mr. Chisanga, they would rather have Mr. Chisanga up to the 5th year end. If they think something has happened, they would rather come back and vote for another person. But our colleagues are trying to justify it on the basis of saving money and all. Democracy is a very expensive commodity. You don't just want to run around with it because you want to save money.
To some extent, I still feel, yes, much as democracy must take place, and it's expensive, yes, but I feel that, look, I know that right now it would look so bad, but it works out well for others. I mean, if the opposition, if you in the opposition, for example, you are the one that lost an election, and something happens to the incumbent, and then the opposition ends a seat in parliament automatically. I mean, it still works out well on numbers.
What about the right of people to choose?
I mean, it could have happened. It simply means that it simply means that, I mean, there are MPs that have won. I mean, there are MPs that have won even through dubious means. Okay, it's not always the people's will. I mean, we've heard about rigging, for example. We've heard, even right now, things the opposition have been talking mainly about how unfair most by-elections were. I mean, you made reference to Kwacha. You made reference to Kabushi. I mean, that it was unfair. Can you imagine? I mean, in case, how then do you say it is the will of the people now? Because the will of the people say it was through the fact that Malanja and Bowman won the election. It was the will of the people.
Yes, but
now it's not the will of the people because we went to an election.
Yes, rigging and malpractices in elections have got provisions that cure them. That's why you've got the right to go back.
But it's
to
hard in
no,
Zambia.
no,
It's been hard in Zambia.
It only became hard under the UPND because of the intimidation they put in the judiciary. But the reality is that if you've read law reports before, you know, where even sitting members of parliament who are from government had their seats nullified and they were disqualified by a decision of the court that they should not participate in elections again. So for me, rigging and malpractices have got their own within the provisions of the law. There's recourse when there's a problem. What I have difficulties with is to try and push the will of the people to segment it into hierarchies. That if they're chosen Mr. Chisanga first and Mr. Chisanga dies, we should just go and pick up Mr. Banda and say can come through and take over. I think that we are usurping democracy. We should be able to allow the people to come and have a fresh election to elect who they would like to elect. Because in any case, it may not even be the second person who they will choose. They might even choose another person because they'll have assessed what was happening in the constituency when the deceased was sitting in the office. But like I said, these are my views. The point I'm making, which you should not escape, sir, is that again, this is such a controversial provision of the Constitution that the ruling elite cannot just suggest a solution to without consulting the people or giving the people a period of only 4 weeks to consult. We can come up with a provision as important as that. We need to demonstrate clearly that people have been given the opportunity, they have examined this provision, and they agree that we should have a second person to take over after the one who was in power died.
Yeah, it is so far believed to be the most controversial one that we are going into, the seventh one. I mean, nominated MPs increase and parliamentary representation.
Yes.
What are your concerns regarding the proposed amendment? And this one is to Article 682 and 6, B, which would raise the number of nominated members of parliament beyond 8.
Yes.
Now, let's get it right.
Yes.
The Minister of Justice defends this through a percent.
Yes.
Okay, she says in the current situation, 156, 8 that the president is mandated to nominate are a representation of 5.5%. So if we are going to increase to 200 constituencies, the 5.5% will still apply. It's just that it will mean that 5.5% increases the number probably by 2, which becomes 10 MPs to be nominated by the president. What is your thought on this?
You know, I sat in that parliament and started developing a fainting feeling when I was hearing the minister trying to justify that on that basis. You know, to start with, this is a democracy. A democracy means that, you know, people must be given the right to choose who they would like to rule them. And a president, when he is elected by direct election, which is what we do in this country,
right,
he is also given a specific mandate within the Constitution of how many people he can nominate. The people of Zambia resolved to have 8 as a number of the nominated members of parliament. At the time they were prescribing 8, 2 things were imperative. Firstly, there was never the thinking that it's going to be a proportion or a percentage of the numbers in the parliament. It was not the consideration.
So before we had 156 constituencies,
yes,
the number was still 8.
Yes, it was. So there was no consideration of a percentage. This is a very disingenuous way of the minister suggesting that this was a proportion. This is basically how dictatorships are born. That now I want to be given the right to choose more people to put in the constituency, rather than as opposed to what you people had said on the occasion of amending the constitution. Okay, just to recast, you know, Vasata even made a mistake once. You know, he nominated more people.
Yeah, about 10.
He felt he had that power. Okay, he was misled by somebody. But you see what he did? An honourable man that he was, he came back and apologized to the nation. That I was misled. I'm so sorry. I apologize for that. And he dropped the 2 that he appointed. Yeah. That's how we respect the will of the people. But this minister was being disingenuous by suggesting that the proportion or a percentage of that number should be something we carry through into the amendments. No, madam. you should take this issue to the people and let them justify, let them tell you if it's justifiable for the president to be given an additional number. But you see, the other thing that you see that is contained in there is they will even want to give that power of prescribing the number to the members of parliament. Because if you heard the provision, it says the number shall be prescribed
through an act.
Through an act of parliament.
Yeah.
So and an act of parliament is basically enacted with a simple majority. So you actually now usurp the power from the people and give it to a small group of people within parliament to have the president, so it's not necessarily that it's going to be now that the proportion, it even be more, because if you say the number as prescribed by an act of parliament, it means you have given parliament a blank check to decide who are going to indicate as nominees. For me, like I said, this is how dictatorships are formed. But see, even one of the ardent supporters of Hakainde Hichilema, Laura Miti, yesterday made a very startling statement.
Absolutely.
That look, I'm shocked that we can get to this level, under the watch of the UPND, that we want to give the president all these powers that he should never otherwise be given. But for me, this is what I'm telling you, that what we are experiencing today, under guise of an attempt to clean up and make the constitution better, is an entrenchment of a dictatorship by the elite. This is an oligarchy that is being born in this country. And Zambians must take, I said it yesterday and I've been saying it so many times. You see, the only reason why UPND is progressing the way they're progressing is because every Zambian has taken to a rocking chair and they're relaxing where they're sitting. To be honest with you, Zach, in any other country, if a government tries to toil or to tamper with the constitution in the way the UPND is trying to do it right now, people will be on the streets right now. People will be exercising the right that is reserved for them in the constitution. And this is not to ask for a revolution. This is actually to tell this government that people have got the right under the constitution to stand up and defend the constitution, because there's a provision in the constitution that every citizen has a duty to defend the constitution. And that provision is doubled when it comes to the president. The president is given a mandate to protect the constitutional order that we're saying. But what we are seeing, unfortunately, which is the opposite, is that the president is seeing a scheme to damage the constitutional order that we have for the sake of making sure that UPND survives the next election. Now, this for me is what I considered yesterday. This is a scheme to execute a coup d'etat against the constitutional order in the nation. And like I said, in other countries, right today, if people heard what was being said in parliament yesterday, they would have been on the streets today saying, sir, you can't do this. And this is not to say we will be violating the constitution. People will be exercising their power directly to remind the government that they are only but servants of the people, and they should not be doing what people have not permitted them to do. But this is Zambia. Okay, and like I said, this is happening because the majority of us who are supposed to be standing up, not only for ourselves, but for generations that are going to come after us, should now stand up and let this president and this government know that this is not what Zambians want. We can go to the next election with the current constitution, especially because what they are considering non-controversial clauses in the constitution, what they're considering low-hanging fruits in the constitution, are actually very controversial provisions that they want to amend with this laissez-faire attitude. Just come to parliament, and just come and amend the laws. You can't. That's not how you run a country, Zach. This country is supposed to be boasting itself as one of the most renowned constitutional democracies, not only in the region, but in the whole Africa. This country needs to continue being admired as a real constitutional democracy where even power changes takes place without any amount of violence. But what the UPND are doing, they're setting up people against them. And this, in my view, they should just introspect. They should just go back to cabinet and sit and say, ladies and gentlemen, are we doing the right thing? Like I said, the demeanor I saw of their own members of parliament in that parliament yesterday, it gave me the feeling that these people are either being whipped wrongly or they just clearly are confounded with what their leaders are doing, to which they're not even privy themselves. They're just being asked to come and endorse an amendment to the constitution that is not even going to stand the test of time. But for me, it's a challenge to the Zambian people that what you set yourselves to do, in 2016 is now being scattered. Mind you, for us to come to where we were in 2016, Zach, it took putting together the reports of the Constitutional Review Commissions that sat in this country from 1973 to 2002. loading them into one document, which you call the People's Draft. And that document was distributed or circulated countrywide for people to look through and say, okay, this is what we want to put in our constitution. Then there were meetings that were held at district level, provincial level, and national level before we came up with the People's Draft, which unfortunately, under the watch of Mr. Winter Kabimba, who was Minister of Justice, it went missing. I was president of RAS at that time. And we went to the public and cried loudest as last that what the PF government was doing in 2014, 2015 was wrong. To take a constitution that people have agreed we want to amend this constitution after lengthy deliberations, after lengthy stakeholder considerations. Now we are about to enact a constitution. Then it goes missing. There was a lot of noise. In fact, that's when the popularity of the Patriotic Front at that time started waning, because Zambians started thinking we are being deceived by the Patriotic Front. But thanks to what happened in 2015 when Edgar Lungu was elected, he came back and said, we are going to enact what is contained in the People's Draft. The UPND had no choice but to participate in the process because they knew how credible that process was. Until we enacted Act number 2 of 2016, that was a people's thinking. But to come and amend it in the fashion that we are seeing now, it is actually to usurp the people's powers. This is a direct affront. It's an insult to what we did from 2014 to 2016 to amend our constitution. We can do things better as a nation.
Let's cruise through some of them. First of all, MP term harmonization and fixed terms. Do you agree to the proposed amendment of Article 81 and 266, which would fix parliamentaries' term or parliamentarians' term to 5 full years?
You know, some of these clauses.
And what does that mean anyway?
What it means is that, you see, Parliament, we basically we prorogue Parliament in May of the year in the elections.
Yeah.
But they would like to give us May, June, July to remain in office as members of Parliament. To me, as George Chisanga sitting in Lukashia Constituency, it's a sweetener. It's something that I would like to have done because it keeps me in office as member of Parliament, okay, until we begin to agitate for elections. But you see, I would like to be a patriot. I wouldn't like to support a process, you know, such as an overhaul that's being proposed by them to amend the constitution simply because they've given me 3 months to remain in office from the time that we're supposed to prorogue Parliament. As much as that is beneficial to me, I refuse to accept that I should participate in a process that is so dangerous for the nation simply because it gives me the opportunity to remain in office for those 3 months. And also, I refuse to be allowed to listen to the more redeeming voices out there, which have spoken against the amendment of the Constitution simply because they have told me, oh, we're going to keep you in office for the next 3 months after your term is prorogued. You don't begin to incite big men and women like me and other members of Parliament by selling them the idea that you're going to have 90 days of your days credited to you and you'll be getting paid for the period because we want you to amend the other provisions of the Constitution. That is very incorrect. And I would like all members of Parliament, even those in the ruling party, to search their hearts. If they would like to eat this small sweet of 90 days, a process as dangerous as what is being proposed to amend the Constitution simply because they're going to be kept in that office. They would like that to happen, yes, but I don't think that would justify that. They'll use that as justification to participate in a process that is so dangerous for the nation. This is something that we should not buy.
Much as every member of Parliament would love this, but what does that do to a member of Parliament who has to go and defend his own seat through campaigns? Because then campaigns would have been in motion, no?
Well, quite frankly, I don't even know how it will happen in practice, because in practice, Parliament will prorogue, unless we don't want to prorogue Parliament. But also, if what you're saying is correct, that it means it disadvantages me. I will be sitting here in Parliament
while your opponents are campaigning
in there. But also, it gives me an advantage because I have incumbency. I still am a member of Parliament. I can go there and participate and purport to be an MP doing all those things. Like I said, it is a sweet that is very bitter to swallow, just because somebody wants to bankroll their position to amend the Constitution.
This is similar to the next one: ministers' vacancy and pre-election. I mean, yes. Pre-election period, that is, and your thoughts on this proposed amendment. And this is Article 116, yes. Which would vacate ministerial offices 90 days before elections to curb misuse.
Yes, this is also just a deception of the UPND. The UPND were the ones who supported the last petition that took the case of ministers to court.
Yeah,
and the court made a determination that ministers should not remain in office. Okay, so what they're now trying to do is to reverse the roles, because they are sitting in government now. They would like to retain for themselves incentives that go with remaining in office. My take is that as I've argued with the members of parliament, I should argue with ministers, don't eat poison sweets just because somebody would like to have an over amendment of the constitution after suggesting that they're just harvesting raw hanging fruits and uncontroversial provisions. These are provisions that cannot be changed without consulting the people in their constituencies.
Article 154 is one of them. Article 154 2B. Do you agree that this should be amended, which would then remove the two-term cap for mayors?
You know, in fact, somebody that called in when I was speaking to the journalist even said, "Look, we are surprised that there is this suggestion to remove the two-term mayor. What we were even thinking is that even you members of parliament must have your term limited to 2 terms. We have a presidency that is limited to 2 terms. We have mayors that are limited to 2 terms. So the suggestion that the mayor's 2 terms must be removed, people haven't even received it, you know, with support. They actually think it is moving in the reverse. What they were thinking is that the 2 terms that mayors are allowed to serve must even apply to MPs.
Yeah.
So it is a very retrogressive way of amending the constitution. And even now, I've seen no justification why the government would like to make that amendment. But quite frankly, it is simply because they want to make MPs feel comfortable that they're not about to have their terms curtailed to 2 terms, you know. So by removing the mayor's term, it means the MP remains free. Like I said, this is lessing poison sugar. Like, in fact, Mr. Harande is the one who said it before, when he was asked why he couldn't support, you know, butane, especially because butane had what was considered then progressive terms. He answered, you know, rather sarcastically that it's not wise to drink poison just because somebody has put sugar in it. You know, that's exactly what is happening. They are putting sugar in this poison called constitutional amendment and letting those who sit in parliament support it because they are made to feel more comfortable, you know, in terms of what the future holds for them. I think we need to address ourselves to the important imperative that constitution making is a national program as opposed to a political program. Once politicians begin to think that they are responsible for amending the constitution independent of the young people, then we're going in the wrong direction. We are only stewards in that parliament. Our views are not as important as the views of the people that we represent. At this juncture, we are all called upon to go back to the people that we represent in parliament and seek their views on whether we can support this or not. And if the people tell us don't support it, like they have already said, it is only fair, whether you belong to the UPND or not to support this process because it's a dangerous trajectory that we're taking as a nation.
Apologies, I'll leave out 13, which is definition of child and adult, but I will bundle the 2 because of time. We need to take phone calls. I will bundle the last 2, Secretary to Cabinet Eligibility and Experience, which is Article 176.3. And also Attorney General continuity and transitional period. Okay, so let me read the first one. This one is obviously concerning Article 176.3, which would lower the experience requirement for the Secretary to Cabinet from 10 to 5 years. And then the Attorney General continuity and transitional period is 178.1b and 179.4b, which would retain officials until new appointments are made. Let's quickly hear your response and your take on those 2 amendments.
I'm very worried about the Secretary to Cabinet's provision. You see, one thing that qualifies you to be in that very important, you know, that's a chief civil servant. One thing that qualifies you to be in that must be experience. In all fairness, we should even have been talking about maybe increasing that to 15 years because you will be presiding over government activities. It is only fair that we either leave it at 10 years where it is currently, or even consider increasing it to 15 years. Somebody must be sufficiently experienced to hold that office. The reason why these things are happening is because we are now beginning to convert civil servants as political servants. We no longer consider them as civil servants. And this has come, and somehow I can take a fair share of the blame maybe as Patriotic, because even we had started introducing cadres into civil service by appointing permanent secretaries from outside civil service. If we have to have a very effective civil service, it's only fair that some senior positions be reserved for people that have a career civil service lifestyle. The secretary cabinets who are eligible for appointment now are those who have served government in very senior positions for more than 10 years. That is what you require to have the experience that is sufficient to let you manage the affairs of public service. It is the same if you see, even in the appointment of judges.
Yeah.
You are only eligible for appointment of a judge if you had the experience at the bar of 10 years, because that is the amount of time you require to understand the nitty-gritties of the bench and the bar, how they operate. If you appoint somebody who is not as sufficiently experienced, you create a problem. How are you going to justify appointing a civil servant, into the office of Secretary to Cabinet who has got 5 years experience, and they will be presiding over people that have had 17 years of experience? One of the greatest complaints we've received us as public servants, if I go to Lukashia, in engaging with government officials, they will tell you, Honourable, we've got a problem. Our deputy PS nangwa DC batretera. They understand government procedure. If you try to follow kulola muri fi venanga basa mukula na pafintu bafwa fe device effort to reach. Now civil service time mumsango so. Okay, to paraphrase in English,
Yeah.
the great challenge that civil servants have is that these who are appointed from outside, or those who are appointed with little experience, become an impediment actually to delivery of civil service. But those who are experienced, those who have read the government, documentation on how the government regulations on how to run and manage civil service, that's why civil service is supposed to be a smart process in delivering public services. This suggestion, I have no idea how government justifies this suggestion, that you should be able to have only 5 years experience to be appointed Secretary of Cabinet. That's a very high position. And if it is true that UPND can go around, and this is not something you can even go and consult honest. You can't go to Mr. Zach or Mr. Chisanga and say, what do you think? Go to civil servants. And I can tell you, every civil servant who has had experience in government will tell you that this 10 years experience is very important for someone to be appointed as Secretary to Cabinet. But it is when you want to politicize the civil service, that's why you find things like this happening. Quite frankly, like I said earlier, this is not something, first, it's a very controversial provision.
Yeah.
You can't argue that it's non-controversial. Secondly, it's not something you can allow for 1 month to discuss as a public and agree whether Secretary to Cabinet must only have 5 years experience. But we are sitting at a table where this provision is already in the draft constitution. So no matter how much you are going to argue against it, they are still so hell-bent to pass it and enact it.
And the Attorney General?
Same story. The Attorney General, first in my assessment, you see, we have, and I want to argue this as a lawyer, we have so weakened the position of the Attorney General that they have now become mere messengers to politicians. And this is not only unique to the UPND. I think it started under MMD, it came to PF and then some to UPND. The only problem with UPND, they even want to institutionalize a suggestion that you can continue weakening the position of the Attorney General. If I was to argue as a lawyer, I would even want us to get back to what it used to be under UNIP and under MMD in the early years, where the Attorney General had security of tenure, and the Attorney General was the last line advisor to it, and what the Attorney General said is what went. I was a very young lawyer when MMD came into power. I had just, I think, been called to the bar, and I was about 2.5 years at the bar. There was a man called Mr. Ali Hamia, who was appointed Attorney General by President Chiluba. Whenever you walked into the office of Attorney General, you knew that you were actually dealing with the government. The aura that just surrounded the office, the dealings that you would get involved in with the Attorney General, and what you would get out of him when he tells you, what government position is, that you are dealing with the senior most, person that serves government. Mr. Ali Hamia was only able to do that because he enjoyed sufficient tenure. At least he enjoyed the respect from his colleagues who had appointed him into cabinet and who had appointed him to the office of Attorney General. After Ali Hamia, I think they appointed George Lupe, same outlay. Over time, we started seeing, the deterioration of that office, because politicians started putting a lot of undue influence on the office of Attorney General. Sometimes even the opinions that have been coming out of the Attorney General are those twisted in the direction, of government. You would be very lucky to have a brave person become Attorney General. And usually when a brave person becomes Attorney General and you abuse them as politicians, they will show you their back. They will just resign and move on. That is what we're supposed to be seeing in the office of Attorney General. I don't know what the intention of this provision is, but suggestively they are saying that the Attorney General must, stay in office until the next Attorney General is appointed. Because of a political environment that we've created for ourselves, where you have now seen that every government that comes in appoints their own Attorney General, this provision might be counterproductive, because you will leave somebody in office who will vacate when another person comes in. What would we have achieved in there? My thinking is that I would rather we also canvass amongst legal practitioners. I don't practice law as much as I used to practice before. But I think if you talk to those who have been experienced in the practice of law for more than 15 years, what we should rather be doing is suggesting how we can strengthen the office of Attorney General, rather than create just a tenure, that moves with the tenure of the presidency or the government, without suggesting how we strengthen that office. My thinking is that we need to get back to the days when the Attorney General was the chief advisor of cabinet rather than a messenger of the politicians.
That said, before I open the phone lines, a candid question.
Yes.
This or these amendments, would they go through? Does the UPND have numbers in Parliament? And if they have, and it will go through, and the majority, if there are majority Zambians out there who feel this is not bad, unfortunately, it would have to go through because the UPND has numbers. Do they, as things stand, is this likely to go?
It's a very controversial question, which merits a slightly detailed answer. I'll tell you what we have experienced in the last 3.5 years. The UPND has engaged in a systematic destruction of the opposition, especially the Patriotic Front. If you have seen what machinations have put in place, they have been hell-bent at weakening the Patriotic Front and also at borrowing some of the members of Patriotic Front who I would, for lack of a better term, call weak souls, to patronize the UPND. What we experienced with Emao Sampakeses, now Chabinga, etc., have all been designed to make sure that they weaken the Patriotic Front and also they weaken their participation in Parliament. One of the very tragic experiences that I witnessed was at the time that Chabinga was purporting to be president of the Patriotic Front. He made two declarations. Firstly, he declared that the PF was supporting President Hakainde Hichilema for the 26 bid to return to State House. That him, as the PF president, had told all the MPs of the PF. In fact, he was saying they were getting into a pact or in an alliance with the UPND. It's such a very unfortunate statement to come from somebody who purports to be the president of the party. Beyond that, you have seen, especially our colleagues from Eastern Province, our members of Parliament from Eastern Province, who are always patronizing the UPND. It's one thing to lend, periodical support to what the president is doing because we believe in it, but to try and suggest that you have even shifted and moved to the
camp of the UPND
under the Constitution, actually you have crossed the floor. It means the speaker must declare your seat vacant and there must be an election in your constituency. But unfortunately, because UPND has come to destroy everything that we know as constitutional, they've come to destroy everything that we know as parliamentary, they've come to destroy everything that we know as legal. All those things will happen and there will be no consequences on people that do wrong things. And those people, unfortunately, seem to be suggesting they're on the line of the UPND. Yeah. And, you don't have to ask a question. What would happen if we went to the vote?
So as things look,
well, that's a perceptional issue.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, one time Nevas is a very instrumental politician to me. Even people write him off many times, and I don't know why they're
in this. You mean Nevas Mumba, Dr.
Yes,
Nevas
Mumba? Yes. One time he preached, and I was sitting in the audience. He preached a sermon called "The Determination of the Human Spirit." That sermon moved me so much that up to now, You know, I sit on that sermon every time I think about what I want to do, which is going to keep my conscience clear. Every time I find myself tempted or challenged to do something that is untoward, I always remember the determination of the human spirit as preached by Nevers Mumba. And I walk away from what I think might not give me or might not lead me into integrity. One of the very good qualities of a very good leader is to have integrity and character. And I want to think that even the weakest member of parliament has some level of integrity and some level of character. And sometimes character is both challenged and built in controversial circumstances. If everybody who sat in parliament yesterday was experiencing what I was experiencing when the minister was rolling out this unfortunately evil agenda for the nation, if such a person was going to be asked to vote for this, and he exercises even the most minimal of his character and integrity, this is something that you would never support. So I am thinking that as we begin to build up this dialogue between now and the time we actually go and debate this in Parliament, those of our friends who, for any amount of consideration or none, have started siding with the UPND should try and recalibrate their thinking and do a soul searching and introspect and see where this is going to take. Even more importantly, the constituencies from which they come don't only have men of straw. I think they have got people that are more intelligent than them in the constituencies. The challenge they have now is also for them to go, like I am going to Lukashia, and engage in the people in their constituencies, discuss this discourse with them, have this discourse with them of where we are about to take the country, and hear out from the people what they're going to tell them about posterity of this nation. And when we come back to that parliament, have that mindset. You know, one time Barack Obama was asked if he was gay, and he said he wasn't gay. And then somebody asked him, but why do you, support gay
laws?
Yeah. He says, look, I am sitting in the office of a president where, because the status quo has been created in such a way that even gays are supposed to have their own, they're supposed to have some level of respect. I accord them that respect because I'm sitting as president, but I condemn it as an individual. I don't believe in it. So he was beginning to tell that the office of president, the office you're sitting in, comes with certain expectations that people are going to have to make you do something that your personal opinion don't
may not agree. Yeah.
Okay, so as a member of parliament, I sit in an office where if I go to Lukashia and people tell me Chisanga, constitution already. I'm actually responding to some texts that are coming from constituency. Lukashia is a very political constituency. They follow parliament every day. They have already started saying, because if they still parliament, they're already voicing that concern. So I have to go back to them. Okay, and I won't come back here and say, oh, that I show about parliament 90 days after, so I can finish voted. No, I have to come back here wearing the mind of the people of Lukashia and sitting in that parliament saying the people of Lukashia have said they don't agree with this and therefore I'm not going to vote for it. And I'm making an appeal to my colleagues, who have taken, their office of member of parliament, even when they took an oath to protect the constitution. They seem to have walked away from that oath. I'm just making an appeal to them. This is time for soul searching. This is not even politics as usual. Anybody who has, yesterday Zambia was in a state of confusion. Anybody who has read what the minister wrote out yesterday is confident with where we're taking the nation. If there are people that are supporting that agenda, they're not more than in the whole country. I can tell you that. And they're supporting it purely because either they don't understand or they've bought into what this government would like to achieve. I'm very convinced that even amongst the leaders of the UPND, there are people who are not supporting this agenda because this agenda sits very contrary to where we're going. Talking about whether they can pass it or not, my determination is that this amendment must not pass. My determination is that this government must introspect and even remove this agenda from the floor of the House. But most importantly, my expectation is that Zambians now, even those who are sitting in their rocking chairs, it is time to stand up for the nation. We built this nation on the basis of what is called consultative democracy. We built this nation on the basis of what is called constitutional democracy. The president cannot be right at every time. He is just human. The president cannot be objective at every time. There are some times when he is subjective. His focus, if you have seen, and which is very unfortunate, the focus the president has now is nothing more than wanting to win 2026. So he will do everything within his means to secure his victory in 2026. Unfortunately, Zambians must stand up and begin to tell him that is not what it is all for life. There's something more in life than just wanting to win the presidency. There was one young man called Chabota, who did an analysis of what this delimitation would be designed to do. First I was thinking, this is just a Gen Z and everything. But when, I heard the minister make those pronouncements yesterday, I went back to that clip and started watching it and seeing exactly what this is all about. This delimitation, you must watch it. It's not just the ordinary delimitation, because to start with, there's already a delimitation report that was prepared by the ECZ in 2019, 2020, thereabout. If UPND is intent on implementing the delimitation the way it was done by the ECZ at that time, they can simply take it, dust it, and come and implement it. But no, the minister was saying that ECZ is going to collect views of how to achieve delimitation. Again, if you're watching that Chabota's thing and you marry it to what Dr. Beani was doing with the ZAMstats, the time they were rolling out the statistics, where it was, he wanted to project the view that Zambia statistics was lying about the people who are sitting in Southern Province. There are more people in there than ZAMstat was trying to produce. If you begin to marry all these things and bring it to delimitation, you will see how evil the agenda of amending this constitution is. It is all designed to make sure that a particular weight in terms of voting pattern is created even before we go to the votes. So we really have a big problem as a nation, and we have to pay attention to every aspect of it to make sure that we save this nation. This is about the Republic of Zambia. This is about the sovereignty of our country. It is not about a political party or certain individuals who think they've got a better right to be in positions where they are than the rest of the nation.
Honourable George Chisanga, Member of Parliament, and he is a lawyer by profession. He is also PF Chairman for Legal Committee and Lukashia Member of Parliament at the same time. Let me take phone calls on 0955 221515. And of course, we've got very little time, so make sure that you make your comment within a minute. All right, and let's quickly pick one. You've got a minute. Good morning and welcome to the burning issue.
Hello, good morning, Zach.
Morning to you.
Good morning, State Council.
Good morning, good morning, sir. Good morning.
Yeah, a very interesting topic.
Yes, sir.
Council, I'm really worried as a citizen of this country. First of all, if you look at that roadmap, I think it's a flawed roadmap. I'm actually shocked that the executive could actually dictate to Parliament how Parliament should run. Now, they have even put time for Parliament. This is unprecedented. This is unheard of, Council. You cannot allow these people to rape the state institutions like this. Surely, you have even put a time constraint. 30 days consultation. After the 2 days later, it goes to select committee. 2 days later, the 15 days and all. You can't. The executive should not poke their nose in the functions of Parliament. Parliament should run independently.
Yes.
Then to just quickly run through some clauses, so many things, but I'll just pick on two.
Yes.
This issue of avoiding by-election.
Yes.
I think that is not democracy.
Yes.
You cannot impose a person who was rejected by the majority in an election to say, because this one is number 2, then this one is going to be your leader. You can't do that. That is a dictatorship. A person who was rejected cannot be imposed on the people because they came out number 2, then you impose on them. The issue of Article 52, State Council, this one I'm really worried with the Article 52.
Yes.
Where a candidate resign, they're saying that the election will be This will disadvantage other political parties, State Council. And this is an infringement on the rights of us, the citizens, who have got the right to choose the leaders that we want. This is going to be abused. Personally, the government can simply decide to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 MPs. Let's pay them. You guys resign. Then they have it. They have it easy. You cannot do that. You cannot proceed with an election when a candidate of a political party has resigned. You're disadvantaging that political party. The issue of increasing nominated member of parliament, I was shocked that the entire Minister of Justice could lie in Parliament to say that number is 5%, it's proportionate or it's a ratio. But before the House, before we had 156 members of Parliament, we still had the number 8 in Parliament. So how could they today say that, it is a ratio, it's 5%, so it's 5% of whichever number in Parliament? That is not true. And I just pray and hope that the members of Parliament are going to stand up and are going to stand up and defend the rights and defend the Constitution of Zambia. You cannot rush to amend the Constitution like that. Lastly, I know I've run out of time. The issue of the 10 minutes.
Yes.
Council, surely you are telling me that removing the term for the mayor is what has motivated the constitutional amendments. I don't want to believe that. So now, what I can analyze, what I'm seeing here is, okay, member of parliament, no 10. They want now to prepare for the presidency. So they want to say, okay, you guys, member of parliament, they have got no 10. Mayor has got no 10. Why should the president have a 10? Anyway, we are watching, but I'm very worried. I am very, very, very worried.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much,
Thank you so
Andrew,
much.
for that.
Advice.
Yeah, let me take another. Good morning. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Sir.
Mr. Zulu, where are you calling us from? Please go ahead.
Yes, sir.
On the resignation,
Yes, sir.
suppose a member of parliament resigns and the one who actually the second dream dies. What happens? Do we go ahead with the by-election? Good morning.
Thank you.
Right, thank you
very much, and thank you for keeping to within very much a minute. 0955221515 is the number you're calling us on. Good morning.
Good morning, Bwana Zaki.
Morning to you. Thank you very much. Name and where are you calling us from?
Brother Namanda in Kampumba.
Brother Namanda, you've got a minute.
Wonderful. Honourable, good morning.
Ms. Amanda, how are you, sir?
I'm very fine.
Good to hear from you after some time.
Honourable.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Honourable,
Mr.
I
Naman.
think let us not politicize the issue of constitution amendment.
Yes, sir.
This roadmap which has been provided, it is just a roadmap. You that you are aware, you cannot start building a house without a time frame. Time frame. Nganavyala chirembe, therefore by April nishinasombola. April abalando kuti 3 months is twachitafyonse. Imuba PF mwalibele kirekia kuti ngamwambe finti tafipwa. Kuti mulesenda kalusangu, mulevika mtumba mulevila abantu, mano yabu pumpwe. We put a time frame so that no one should continue gobbling.
Yes.
Look what this a cake law which you amended before the 2021 general election. That you are aware that iramulo kunalibe yakuti muntu ngati resign. Wamena afiring kudama nomination vakansula ma elections yake. Kunalibe ramulo kutoka muri vakaunda. Vana saina ramulo ini vayedzigaru kuhiro zuko. Ezo vina kuja vamwe manje vakuta vambo vina vasaina malamulo yaso. Iramulo inambosenza mu 2021.
But inachoka ku bantu siso.
Very bad law.
Sikuti inachoka ku bantu.
Sina choke ku bantu vanatengana veka na musician vezovina munabaona kuja vazaki munaenda muvagopa vazina ku heroes kuti kunali vantu kuti kunaye makada vezongovina kuja na kunyamula manje so iramulo tetikabeso vazaki yaimira vatatu imwe vaviri mu parliament 9 yaimira manje pa by election 2 days before the elections the ballot papers are printed na manda achita withdraw vaenda vaprinta yenango 2 days before the elections, Zachariah will withdraw. 2 days, are we going to have those elections? Look how mischievous that law is. That is an archaic law, and it is very dangerous. It can plug this country on fire. Do you know that we can even go for 10 years without a presidential election in our country? In the fighting, 2 days before the election, I withdraw. By church, 2 days, we can drag on up to 20 years. This is how dangerous this law is. So
thank you, brother.
MP,
yeah.
I don't even see anything to support such a cake law. Finally, the issue of this draft, go to your constituents, members of parliament, one by one, 13 up. Imurela Ndashani, yes. Imuletishan, no. Elo Mukalete. If that is not a final draft, if it means trimming those clauses up to 5, we should trim them. If it is increasing them, we need to increase them. So you shouldn't worry going around crying on top of the mountain as if it's something. That is just a proposed.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother Namanda.
Finally, Zaki, I'm proposing to add the 14th one.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, brother Namanda. Let me take another one. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Zach, good morning.
Good morning to you. Your name and where are you calling us from?
It's Chirufia calling you from Leicester.
From Leicester, as in Leicester, the UK.
Yep. Honourable Sanga, good morning.
Morning, Machirufia.
I've been listening to you, and I would want hats off to you. You've explained everything very well. The issue that I have got, when I got these articles which the government want to amend, I wrote down a few points. I mean, the numbers.
Yes.
The first one was delimitation.
Yes.
I think I would want to believe that I may be unpopular on this one. Much as we want to, divide their constituencies, let us think about, or rather, let's take into account the reasons why we are speaking about certain constituencies being big when actually the population is next to nothing.
Yes.
What we needed to do as a country is to take development to these areas. Mm-hmm. Your constituency may be big, all right, but it's only big because it's not accessible. Mm-hmm. So on that one, I'm saying to the government and to the Zambian people to say, hang on a second, let's sit down, consult, and then we can come up with the way forward. Mm-hmm. The other thing I marked down straight away is point number 7, that of increasing numbers in parliament. We don't need it, for goodness sake. We shouldn't even be discussing that one. The 8 that we have got already are enough. And anyway, let's be honest with ourselves. Out of those 8, how many do speak in parliament? And if they were going to vote, say like for these amendments, do you expect them to go and say no to what the government is proposing? It's a no. I'm sorry. We should be looking at something else. For now, let's shove this on to the side. Focus on improving the lives of people. We can speak about making amendments next year after elections. Honourable Tsanga.
Yes, sir.
I've got a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that we can have in the Constitution something that allows us as a Zambian people to recruit members of parliament? You've already spoken about it, and the reason I'm saying this is we've seen, especially these people from Wakumawa, Zaki, and his relatives. We've seen those MPs who've come out in the open and said, you've spoken about it already. Yes. They've come out in the open and said, we are supporting the government of the day. If I voted for you, right, and you went into parliament on a PF ticket, which majority of members of parliament are saying we are not going to support this. If I voted for you and you want to support the government to push these amendments through, sorry, I should have a right to call you back. They do it in the UK. Exactly. I don't want to start hearing people saying, oh no, this is Africa, like this Bakumawa Zach was trying to say about resignation. No, democracy is expensive. We have to live with it. And please, we are not a poor country. Honourable Sir, please keep enlightening people about this. This is very important. And what is scary is what the Minister of Information has started saying. The last 3 days I've been listening to him.
Yes.
He is saying we will take it to Parliament. No. Bring it back to us.
Yes.
Bring it back to us, the people. If you are going to do this delimitation, I want to know how many constituencies you want to create. It's up to me as a Zambian to say, yes, I agree, or I don't agree. Thanks very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chilufia, all the way from Leicester, for that call. Let me take another one. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Your name and where are you calling us from?
I'm Moses. I'm calling you from Constituency within Lusaka.
Moses.
Yes.
Please go ahead, sir.
I'm worried because the constitution nareta debate sana mu Zambia. And abantu baresa debate ndemono ko bati bari maringa nesho barelanda ba president ko bati nkala bekata pamukoshi na la reteni ngalato. No one can remove me from this chair. I'm glued to the chair. So if you marry these two, no wonder a lot of people are doubting. And I'm thinking, why social Zambians people are so complacent? We are just waiting. I don't know what we are waiting for to say no to this constitution amendment. We have to rise now. Please, people. We have to stop this before it even goes further. Please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Moses, for that. Let me take as many calls, Honourable, as possible, because obviously we opened the phone lines late. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Moderator.
How are you today? I'm very happy you called. How are you today?
I'm fine. Mutare calling from Kawe.
Mutare Kawe, please go ahead.
Calling from Kawe. Wakano kupusha isara wale tano no kushikisha mara tukule kwa kushikisha mara. Watu wana maana kuna ku ya constitution na tukana kule na zamu. Twatulorele niko. 2020 tuka ndio kule nikuitatira mwatura ile. Ya tuwan container zira kama anda wa UPND. Fatata mwa humu. Kama wa ibara bila kwa shonza wa ku constitution. Andi nuko kwa kwa samka toero kana miso kumaini. Bali andati sujira kwa nini ni bani bada tuzira ki. Aombe pali corruption neti je waleranda.
Thank you very much. We'll take some more. Good morning and welcome to the burning issue. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Good morning.
Morning. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Last gigs of the dying. Why you pay the very Stamingalato? I demand every Zambian. All Zambian for Kumulava so immense Chivisia, which is defend the constitution here. Cannot allow these people to rape our constitution, to dismantle our constitution. We are not going to allow it. From Chingola, people are listening. When I think what I mean is Chivisia, they want to get stuff for the Bogusta. What we say mandate amend the constitution. Constitution last amendment, yeah, it's possible because by you pay the value very agreeable to this amendment of the constitution. But this time around, they fear for there is largest opposition in parliament. We are saying no, we cannot allow this. We will not allow.
Hello. Oh, we seem to have lost Wanguni, but thank you very much. And I think that the message has been
very clear.
Has been laid on the table and it's clear. We'll take some more. Morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Not too bad. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Within Lusaka.
Your name again?
Kefa Tembo within Lusaka.
Kefa Tembo. Please go ahead, sir. Thank you for calling.
Abantu bayukindia bana basigwa mukomboni muri nsala abana biso abana kashi insala tabali kwatisa kula mayanda wale utira kumaba ubutendi obwachipa kumando wansala amala itatule kwata bakabala langa bayira nikabala
Thank you, Batembo Mkwai. Let's take some more on 0955-221515. Good morning.
Good morning, Zach. How are you today?
Not too bad, brother Chisha. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Zach. Honourable, how are you today?
Morning, Machisha. How are you, sir?
I'm very fine. Thank you so much.
Good, man.
I have a question for you, Honourable Chisanga.
Yes, sir.
Is Zambia in a constitution crisis? Why UPNB is in a hurry to amend the constitution? Are we in a constitution crisis as Zambia? You know, I was following the speech of the Justice Minister, Madam Kasuna, yesterday. I was very much disappointed, Honourable. Especially when you mentioned something like, now this clause I'm going to announce is for you, members of parliament. Honestly speaking, he was thinking he can buy you with his 3 months allowances being in parliament. You can't say that as a minister because the constitution belongs to Zambians. The constitution is not for you members of parliament alone. No. So for her to start saying no, which members of parliament is not going to be happy with this one I'm going to talk about. Who does that, honestly speaking? Honourable, I'm a very, very disappointed person, especially with some members of parliament from PF who are still supporting this. We are still observing them, and Zambians, 2026 is just around the corner. If they are going to be adopted by UPND, please don't vote for such people because they have shown to us that they're not honesty and they don't care about Zambians. Why should we put constitution as a priority? Because as we are speaking, we are suffering.
Yeah.
They know that the economy of Zambia is. People of Zambia, they are sitting with an empty stomach, and then someone looks in a hurry. Why is it that they look to be so in a hurry? What are they rushing for?
Yeah.
And as I conclude, because I know time is not to our side. My question is, I was following the speaker, the way she was handling the matter in the house. There was this man, this Honourable from. I'm sure it's Koshi. He wanted to contribute. He was curtailed like someone's business. He was like, no, just sit down. It's like, no what you're talking about. Is that how the speaker supposed to be able to answer in time? Thank you so much, Honourable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. We seem to be getting more of for and against, and I think we're getting more of the against.
Well, there's everybody's against. One person is for.
Brother Namanda, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's only one
allow me to take the last four.
No problem.
Let me take the last four. Good morning.
Good morning, Zach. How are you?
Not too bad. And yourself?
I'm fine.
Great.
How are you, the Honourable?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, sir.
Your name, your name, and where are you calling us from?
My name is Edson Chisalalungu.
Edson.
Some people they just call me ECL.
Yes, Mr.
Edson Chisalalungu.
Edson Chisalalungu.
Okay, please. Where are you calling us from?
I'm calling you within Lusaka.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just afraid of this government. These guys, I think I don't know what they are doing now. You know, they are failed to fix that to ZESCO. There is no power all over the country. If you go, you find the load shedding. If you go to the thing, you find the price of fuel in this country, Zambia, where there is the minerals, there is gold and copper. They are failed to maintain the prices on what? To be like in Malawi. Malawi, if you go to buy the fuel in Malawi, it's 18 kwacha. Malawian kwacha. But here it's a 6 kwacha. Now today, coming with this amendment bill, I don't know. Are they going to manage to control this bill or not? Or they're just joking in Parliament? When they went there because they are jokers. They went there to joke. Or to fooling us with Zambians. Mr. Chisanga.
Yes, sir.
Come up, please. Wake up, you PF guys. Please. Wake up. Please, make something. These guys, they must come out. Or even tomorrow, I'm going to want to see.
Tivutika tonse amdana nase tivutika kwantangala. Hakuna nenika mkomboni kumuzikwanija ukasama.
Uone mametivutika abantu. Ife wantu mkomboni olo galu kuti isunge galu. Mwine wanyumba kujia wanzi. Mwanyi unasunga bwanji galu.
Koma zavuta zinto mdala chachende chabu zavuta.
Manyani nkondo please kuti aba bantu wenango bachoke wenango babwerepo amena sifuna ya mene please irritability nyamule please nyamuge mtanga please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ndani uyu abakuchipata au ndani uyu amena ukipata nje Eastern Province Eastern Province youth chairman ndani
Lukashia.
That man he's a very useless man. Yeah, I know exactly for him. I know him very well.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Lungu. Thank you very much. Let me take the last 3 calls. My producer, my executive producer, has given me up to 12:10. So we've got about 4 minutes. I'm hoping I accommodate the 3 remaining callers. Good morning.
Morning, Zach. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. You're talking to
Fred.
Fred. Yes.
Fred, where are you calling us from?
Honourable, I'm calling from.
Fred, how are you, sir?
I'm very fine.
Can you just turn off the radio? Can you turn off your radio completely?
Yeah, sure.
Please.
Well spoken, Honourable. And I just want to encourage you to soldier on with the fight that is going on. But I think for me, I've got 3 issues that I would want to bring across. One, the issue of delimitation.
Yes, sir.
We all know that ECZ is in charge of the delimitation process.
Yes, sir.
Mandate to the local with this power of ECZ we have, which actually abuses the law. Remember the previous violations where somebody resigned, they refused to do the nominations again. They went ahead with the election. Now, with this kind of ECZ we have, which we know is biased, do you think that if they went ahead and delimited some constituencies in the stronghold of the ruling party, you are going to have a say?
There we are.
I wanted to just tell you, we've divided. Take it or leave it. Because they are fond of law. So they usually manipulate this law, put the number of constituencies they want to the ruling party. Then the other thing is, has to do with the increase of numbers. I think this has been talked to. Where you give the president enough numbers, that ratio the minister was trying to work around, you could tell they were seated of trying to find out how we're going to convince the Zambians. Let's find the rate and all that. You could tell there's no rate. The issue is, if you are going to give the president one number, already you've got 8. Those 8 are his employees. They are against him. So in an event that there was an issue, a very contentious issue that needs to be argued in the House, and the president is given the power to nominate 20 extra people, they'll be passing bills like no man's business. Yes. That's a very worrying situation. And then today, I was listening to the radio as well, where some sympathizers of the ruling party, and including one Mr. Delimitation, were saying, no, this is a people-driven constitution. People-driven when it's a government that has come up with it. How can it be driven by the people when the people have not said what they want? And then you could hear someone saying, you see the president is wrong. No, this is a president-driven constitution. It's not a Zambian people-driven constitution. So as Zambians, please, we have all the efforts in you. You are the one that can help us to defend this constitution, which has been left, right, and center.
Thank you very much.
We are not going to permit it to go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Fred. I'm taking the last call now on 0955-221515. Good morning. Tauka kaema mauka bwanje.
Tauka bwino ba MP muri bwanje.
Tiri bwana mama mauka bwanje na imwe.
Tauka magadena
Makanjera mwakabwino.
va MP vatu
Ziko
mwakambabwino maningi
Ziko makanjera.
pitirizani iyo amendment ya constitution naise taikana mavuto mwamene vakambira valungwa ava vachokapo mavuto yali muno mukomboni va MP shuwa izo ndalama zane vafuna chita amend constitution va MP mukabwera kuno ku garden kuno 201 02 kwendo tantamira ungashuwa ni chabwino chaso mukaenda muvipatala muvakungona maboza tiya chipereka minkwala vamu mahospital vakupa minkwala but ni boza sivaperekamo minkwala va vantu i government va MP please mwe muri ku parliament uko tapapata icho chibiu chao tikana vakapitise cha amendment tifuna kuti tibwere petition tinakamba kuti chintu vatimirike tiende kuma election 2026 ndiye pamene tizafuna kuti kuchitiwa amend tikapotela new government vatonsa alliance vakabwerapo vakachita amend zani ivi vamene vafuna vavo vamingalato tavakaneva va UPND please va MP osayesa kuvisapota
Ziko makanja tambe
kutika makomboni mavuto ya chilamwa i government yaleta mjala road shedding 1 week vantu tigona no light usiku wonse mungala menso alipaya awe government niyo kange wa MP osabwera kumbuyo tapapata pitirizani kutikambirako kuti defende nkoni pe vantu vanu vamu makomboni constituencies kwano
zikomo Mama Angela. She's our last caller. Sum it up and you can conclude.
That's right. I'll respect Makanjera as a beginning because first she's the only female that has spoken on the telephone interaction, but also because she now speaks the heart of the Zambian people, especially the Zambian women. You know, I was in Kenya in 2002 when they were trying to amend their constitution, 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
The term that was coined at that time, they were saying in Kiswahili, tunataka katiba mpya. Hii katiba tunataka ni katiba ya Wanjiku. Okay, that we want a new constitution, but we want a constitution that reflects the aspirations of Wanjiku. Wanjiku is a personification of a woman in the village pounding at the mortar. So they were saying, even if you are sitting in that parliament, make sure that the constitution that you are going to enact is one that reflects the aspirations of Wanjiku, because you owe Wanjiku that obligation. That is in keeping with what I had said earlier, that we as members of parliament now are being called upon to soul search. What are we going to support? Are we going to support a constitution that entrenches elitism in the country, or are we going to support a constitution that reflects the aspirations of Anakuruchirufya, you know, in Lukashya constituency, or Inonge, you know, in Lukulu, people that would never have an opportunity to come to parliament, but they depend on us as the stewards to speak for them and on their behalf to make sure that we push the country in the right direction. The constitution must always reflect the aspirations of people that are on the ground. The hunger that Makanjera is talking about is reflective of hunger which you find in every other community if you go around Lusaka or even Kasama and elsewhere. We need to become serious with what we are doing. Somebody, I think it's Fred, who said these people had promised so much when they came into power. Their agenda was to drive the economy, to change, you know, the lives of Zambian people. They have failed to do that. Now, suddenly they're jumping onto the constitution, which they never talked about when they were campaigning. But this tells you what I've been saying here, that, you know, they are seeking to entrench an oligarchy. They want to have a phenomenon of them and us, them being the ones who are leading and us just following without telling them what to do. But they must be reminded that from when we set up the multi-party system, every leader who for the time being is in government is but a servant of the people. He must reflect what the people are expecting. Many of the people that have called in are reflecting the views of the Zambians on constitutional making. They don't agree with it. They don't agree with the timing. They don't agree with the will or the intention of the UPND. What is driving the UPND to enact this constitution? A constitution is a document of the people, and it must reflect at every time what people expect you to do. I will not respond to most of what the people have said, but Namanda, just to remind Namanda, I think he always wants to just come on he's actually a friend of mine, but every time I'm on radio, he wants to call in and criticize what the Patriotic Front did. Namanda must just open his eyes and be objective. What the UPND has done in the last 4 years is much more dangerous for the nation compared to what the Patriotic Front did in 10 years. The PF in 10 years transformed the lives of people, and Namanda is aware of it. you know, the PF was actually